Find out more in the Land Warfare exhibition here at Duxford on the Forgotten War in the Pacific. Well, we're about to present three key types from the Pacific War as far as combat aircraft were concerned, but also machines that saw extensive service elsewhere. All three from the fighter collection. The formation leader has just called running in. Very interesting, contrasting trio of fighters, contrasting design specifications, all of them hugely effective. They're going to be running in from the right. I can see them now over the American Air Museum. A combination of the Grumman FM2 Wildcat, the Curtiss P-40F Warhawk, and the Goodyear FP1D Corsair. So into the vertical goes the rattling sounding Grumman Wildcat, one of the great naval fighters of World War II, one of the great products of the Grumman Ironworks factory in Bethpage, New York, or at least some of them were. This FM2 version from later in World War II was one of many built by General Motors. First celebration of the following further development work, the US Navy liked what it saw and it placed orders for the F4F Wildcat. But it was with Britain's fleet arm of the Royal Navy that the type saw its first service in anger. Initially, we called it not the Wildcat, but gave it our own name, the Marklet. And on Christmas Day 1940 came the type's first kill, when a fleet air arm Marklet shot down a Luftwaffe vehicle's the Wildcats thereafter became heavily engaged in the Battle of the Atlantic, flying off the smaller escort carriers. When the Pacific War started at the end of 1941, it was the US Navy's prime fighter. Only one carrier-borne unit of Wildcats was fully equipped at the time of the Pearl Harbor's attack. It didn't boast the performance of the rival Japanese Mitsubishi Zero, but it was very US Marine Corps Wildcats successfully helped prevent the Japanese invasion of Wake Island in the North Pacific in December 1941. And in some very famous battles, the Battle of the Cold Sea in May 42 and the Battle of Midway that June, Wildcats were engaged, and the latter of those severe defeat was brought upon Japanese forces. This FM2 model, General Motors, was a somewhat revised machine, but GM built over 5,200 of these aircraft. As American forces advanced through the Pacific, the Wildcat, by now a much more effective fighting machine, will be at the start of its career, well equipped by close air support and fighter escort missions off the smaller US Navy and Marine carriers. Scheme on this one, you can see from the D-Day invasion stripes depicts the Wildcat 5 of the Fleet Air Arm. Served with a variety of squadrons and was named That Old Thing, a name that's recently been repainted on the aircraft, which is the sole flying Wildcat in Europe, operated from Duxford by the fighter collection. Now, it's another very versatile warplane, again running in From the right, the P-48 Warhawk. If any of the main Second World War flight attacks flown by the Allies could best be described as perhaps unsung, the Curtiss P-40 family is it. It's rather been in the shadow of the likes of the P-47 Thunderbolt and P-51 Mustang are concerned where it comes to the great American fighters. But as I said, this was a versatile, tough and rugged machine. It had to be to operate in theatres as it did so successfully as the Eastern Front and the Western Desert. The P-36, dated from the mid-1930s, was the first member of the monoplane Curtiss Hawk family. Of course, the fighter collection proton from Duxford, the Hawk 75, was used during the Battle of France by the French Air Force. And the first XP-40 prototype was a P-36 re-engined with an inline Allison V1710 in place of the Pratt & Whitney twin Wasp radial in the name of better performance. However, the P-40 was much more than a re-engined P-36 or Hawk 75 as development went on. It was never the highest performing fighter, particularly at altitude, but by the standards at the start of World War II, it had long range, it was very manoeuvrable at low level, and it was a stable gun platform. Successive variants were developed, and in the Pacific, P-40Bs were in service with the then US Army Air Corps, soon to be redesignated the Army Air Force, at Wheeler Field and Bellows Field in Hawaii at the time of the Pearl Harbor attack. They all had the trusty and durable Allison V1710 engine. But here, this is the P-48 model, which was the first to be re-engined with a power plant. It has a note very familiar to us, that's of the Rolls-Royce Merlin, built by the American Packard Company. It was another effort to improve the aircraft's performance. However, Merlins were in rather short supply, so they reverted to the Allison. The P-48's final pass now. Now I left these P-40s extensively from the Tomahawk and the King Hawk. In particular, the Iron Attack, the P-40s in the desert campaigns of World War II. Remember the P-48 of the fighter collection, another unique airworthy example in Europe, in the colours of an aircraft flown by the US Army Air Force in the Italian theatre. From the left, the Corsair. We're going to join the Wildcat and P-40 in the salute formation roles, plain sailings, consolidated PDY-5A at the lead. That's followed by Aces 5's Douglas C-47A strike train. That inverted gull-wing configuration, you can see, resulted from the need to incorporate folding wings to enable the aircraft to fly off aircraft carriers, while giving the enormous propeller for the Pratt & Whitney double Wasp engine of 2,000 horsepower sufficient ground clearance. And of course, the brought back forward view as the type of wing designated, this one being a With the effect, pt9 version was a very impressive performer when it first appeared. Maiden flight in 1940, service entry a couple of years later. The R2800 engine was the most powerful, largest capacity power plant of any fighter at the time, and it became the fastest American single-engine fighter of the day, capable of speeds in excess of 400 miles an hour. Three examples of another outstanding American fighter of the war, initially qualified for use of aircraft carriers. The US Marine Corps brought into service in 1942, flying from land bases, and Britain's own fleet air arm of the Royal Navy was the first to use Corsair's aeroplane of aircraft carriers before the US Navy did so, but not until 1944. The Corsair was able to outclass the Japanese Zero in most important aspects, and the US Marines employed Fords and these very effectively as they island hopped during the Pacific campaign. It wasn't just an effective fighter. The Navy and Marines used it extremely potently as a fighter bomber, too, supporting amphibious landings, including those that followed the crucial battles in the Pacific campaign of Iwo Jima and Okinawa. Used by 1850 squadron towards the end of 1945, and the fleet air arm's use of the Corsair was extensive and varied in both the European and Pacific theatres. In 1944, fleet air arm Corsairs attacked the German battleship Tirpitz during Operation Tungsten, the sinking of that vessel, and in 1945 they flew from the aircraft carriers Victorious and Formidable to strike targets in the vicinity of Tokyo. And as the salute formation gets ready to run in, this will be the final pass from the Corsair. The costs of World War II in Europe, as Colin was mentioning earlier, were great, and it would take the continent years to recover. But the human losses also, of course, were devastating. 450,000 British lives alone are believed lost. Nations and societies worldwide were affected. It's important to remember them, as we do today, with this formation involving some of the most significant Allied aircraft of World War II, types that, in many cases, helped change the nature of warfare. Boeing B-17G Flying Fortress Sally B is a very important flying memorial to the more than 70,000 Allied airmen killed in the European theatre. This year, that aircraft celebrates its 40th anniversary on the display circuit in private operation. It here leads the flypast in commemoration of the efforts of Allied airmen from 1939 to 1945. It's joined by the P-40, the Wildcat, and the three Mustangs, in behind the Catalina, the Skytrain, and the Beech-18. B provided to this formation also by the aircraft's operator, Ellie Sallingbow of B-17 Preservation Limited, as a thank you to IWM Duxford, which has provided that aircraft with a base for all of the 40 years it's spent stationed in the UK. Well, the other three heavy aircraft, the C-47, Catalina and Beach, have broken round to the north to circuit to land. In comes Brian Smith in the Corsair.
Oh, this is the guy I know.
You can see Sally B with the 5 escort fighters over towards the south. They'll be coming in for one pass. Of course, the events that led up to the day, such as Hitler taking his own life on the 30th of April 1945 and the fall of Berlin on the 2nd of May, made it obvious that World War II in Europe wasn't about to continue for very much longer. And it was on the 8th of May 1945 that Prime Minister Winston Churchill was able to make his official proclamation of victory in Europe.
Ready? A.M. at General Eisenhower's headquarters, General Jodl, the representative of the German High Command, and of Grand Admiral Dönitz, the designated head of the German state, signed the act of unconditional surrender of all German land, sea, and air forces in Europe to the Allied Expeditionary Force, and simultaneously to the Soviet High Command. We may allow ourselves a brief period of rejoicing. But let us not forget for a moment the toils and efforts that lie ahead. Japan,
Words of Winston Churchill announcing victory in Europe on the 8th of May 1945. As you saw, there was a slight change of plan, and we brought the Catalina, the C-47 and the Beech-18 in for one more pass to break to land, which they have now done, as have the P-40 and the Wildcat. Sally B passing majestically overhead en route to the northern hold. That'll be the next bit one display item once we've got these recoveries out of the way. While we do that, perhaps it's an opportune moment to hear a little more of Winston Churchill on VE Day. For on that auspicious date, he addressed gathered crowds in London from the balcony of the Ministry of Health. Crowds in London on the Aviation But then we got a new North American Aviation firm into the fray that have been producing Harvard trainers for the Royal Air Force and what's more, exceeding the production targets. Which after a bit of development became the P-51 Mustang. The RAF took it into combat. The early Allison B-17 twin engine was ready, once it was actually. So the idea came up of incorporating the Rolls-Royce Merlin. The first Merlin engine Mustang put on test near Duxford with the RAF Airfighting Development Unit. The transformed the airplane. The colours of the 78 Fighter Group veteran, Lieutenant Huey Lamb, who came over to see the mount in his colours when it was unveiled at Duxford last autumn. Huey has been a regular visitor to these parts. He cherishes his association with Duxford and the IWN. He recalled to me last year that this indeed the transition was not seen as being a very positive one from Thunderbolt to Mustang. But of course the Mustang fought on with great effectiveness with the so-called Duxford Eagles. 3 Mustangs into round then. The first one, the Fighter Corrections TF-51D, named Miss Velma, back to Kitchen aircraft with the 55th Fighter Group, based at Hampstead. That's flown by Captain Frank Burt Seal. Secondly, an aircraft that we've seen here several times before, used to be named Old Crow, with the scheduled in historic flight. It's been 17 flying port with some 40 passes overhead